if you were paying attention to the signs, it was all predictable. You could see it coming. And I got a lot of pushback when I wrote Post-Truth from people who said, "Oh my goodness, isn't this catastrophizing? How could we possibly end up here?" But as the years went on, it looked worse and worse. I kept waiting for the book, to be outdated and not to apply, but it really didn't. And I think that was, again, not because I had some, great power to foretell the future, but because if you were paying attention to what Trump was doing, it was something that had been done before by autocrats, by fascists, and it was predictable. The difference was the internet. The internet made it possible to spread the disinformation much more quickly. So it was a unique circumstance which had a unique word to define it, post-truth. A lot of people even deliberately misunderstand what that word means, as if it means, well, truth doesn't matter anymore. The term post-truth is a term of lament, meaning truth is in danger. And I defined it in the book as the political subordination of reality. And you could see that in the very beginning of Trump's presidency. But the greatest example of post-truth came in the January 6th insurrection. If there was ever, and the Stop the Steal campaign, right at the very end of his presidency, if there was ever an example of post-truth, that was it.
Yeah, the sort of ultimate flowering of everything that had been coming for quite a few years.
Recently, what did Trump say 3 days ago? This whole, the fraud it in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so what did they find? That Biden actually won by 300 more votes? Trump goes to a rally and he says, "Did you see the results of the audit? It completely vindicated me. It showed that I actually won Arizona." So, that too was predictable. You put facts in front of him, he doesn't buy them. Then, the Arizona Republican Party takes the ballots, takes the voting machines, does this, cockamamie audit. Even, as biased as they are, they find that he didn't win. He still takes credit for it. That's post-truth.
Yeah.
That is, it's laughable, but that is post-truth.
If we go a little further back to the science wars of the 90s, I'd love to ask you about that. It seemed that at that time, it transformed from being an argument between science and conservative, traditional, fundamentalist religion. Pat Buchanan's famous statement about the culture war at the 1992 GOP convention. But there's this shift instead to the growing trend on the left towards the postmodern critique of Enlightenment ideas and values. I just am curious about your take on that. Maybe you can tell us first, if it works for you, which aspects of postmodern philosophy you see as useful and valid, and then perhaps where it may have confused or short-circuited the discourse.
Yeah, I wrote a little bit about this in Post-Truth. I don't think that the folks who came up with the idea of postmodernism intended it to go where it went. I think that their heart was in the right place. They were Derrida making the claim that there was no such thing as objectivity, that you couldn't actually know the truth outside a context. This was an interesting idea in literary criticism. It might even have some applications that scientists should take seriously. Foucault's idea that, in an environment in which you can't know objective truth, what does that mean? It means that those who are claiming that they know the truth are really making a power grab. It's about power, not about knowledge. Another really fascinating idea, which I think, by the way, goes some way toward explaining what happened with Trump. Okay. So there are aspects of postmodernism that are interesting and relevant and insightful. The problem is this. George Orwell once said that liberals are people who play with fire and they don't even know that fire is hot. And I think that that's something of what happened with postmodernism. That is, taking it beyond the point where it is interesting and, let's see how far it goes and how far it applies, but then using it as a cudgel to attack the possibility that you could know things in the sciences, that there was any possibility of of knowing anything about gravity or anything in astronomy is absurd. But once that happened, once the science wars came to the attention, and this wasn't a straight line, right? This moved through relativism and a couple of other isms along the way. But once that critique of science from the left came to the attention of the folks from the right, notice what happened. They said, wow, is this a powerful tool? It's like they were on the battlefield and said, look at this flamethrower. Let me pick this up and see how this works, right?
Yeah.
And then, because once you can incinerate truth from the left, you can also incinerate it from the right. And then you have this really interesting thing happen. Liz Cheney, Liz Cheney, Lynn Cheney, her mother, once wrote a book, excoriating the relativists, just against, all of this left-wing relativism. And yet here comes Kellyanne Conway with the idea of alternative facts and Giuliani saying truth isn't truth, what is that but relativism? So I make the case in my book, Post-Truth, that there are right-wing postmodernists. Not to say that Trump was reading Derrida or Foucault, but some of the thought leaders were on the right. Some of them had studied postmodernism and understood that what you really need in any denialist campaign, which I think MAGA is an alternative narrative. You need to incinerate the truth that you don't like and then build up your own narrative. And postmodernism contributed to that, which drives folks on the left insane. And it's why I got some hate mail from folks on the left at the time, because who wants to be responsible for that mess, right? But again, I don't think their heart was in the wrong place. I think they were just playing with fire and didn't know it was hot. And then the right got a hold of it and used it to hurt people. And that is not what the inventors had intended.
I'm struck every day by the use of this word narrative,
yes,
from the right and from conspiracy theorists, that they spin whatever kinds of facts and evidence are invalidating their position as, well, that's just another narrative. And I'm like, can you get much more postmodern than that?
Well, that's right. That's right. Because yes, it is. You make a good point.
What's so difficult about the time we're in right now is that everyone wants to characterize their own view as the skeptical and evidence-based one. I sometimes disparagingly refer to this as freshman skepticism, in which all knowledge is equally suspect regardless of its basis, right? But except, of course, for the truly batshit crazy stuff, which somehow is on an equal footing with everything else. And those claims are usually accepted for all the wrong reasons. And in our work, we find conspiracy theorists and spiritualists will often say that the rest of us have fallen for the mainstream narrative, while they're the ones who are doing their own research from a skeptical position. How do you think about this epistemic crisis, and is there a way out of it?
You've asked a really important question. I think that a lot of people who self-describe as skeptics don't understand what the term skepticism actually means. Skepticism is a virtue. Skepticism is a good thing. Some of my favorite philosophers and scientists, are skeptical people. Skepticism does not mean that everything is equal, because in the absence of, this is where we come back to this idea of proof and certainty in science, right? Some people will say, well, science needs to prove it. And then whatever science can't prove, they go, aha, now I'm skeptical, and my theory has just as much likelihood of being true as theirs. Where did they draw that conclusion from? Because there's a doctrine in philosophy and science called fallibilism. This idea that no matter how much good evidence you have for your theory, it's always possible that you're wrong. But there is also such a thing as likelihood, given the evidence. And, just because a scientist can't prove something or, doesn't have perfect evidence, doesn't mean that your alternative hypothesis is just as good.